Something unexpected just happened and it has caught the attention of the entire crypto market. A move that nobody saw coming is now creating serious discussion around XRP, and people are starting to ask one big question: is this the moment that changes everything? When a powerful figure makes even a small move, the ripple effect can be massive. And right now, that effect is being felt across the market. The details are still unfolding, but one thing is clear: this is not something you should ignore because it could shape what happens next for XRP in a very big way. Now, let's break this down step by step in a clear and simple way so you fully understand what is going on and why this matters right now. Over the past few days, the crypto market has been moving in a somewhat uncertain direction, with many investors waiting for a strong signal that could define the next trend. XRP in particular has been in a position where it looks ready for a move, but it has been lacking a clear trigger. That is exactly why this recent development is getting so much attention, because it could act as that missing trigger. The surprising move we are talking about is not just a random action, it is something that carries weight because of the influence behind it. Whenever someone with a large impact on technology and finance makes a move, the market reacts, and this time is no different. People are now connecting the dots and trying to understand whether this action is directly linked to XRP or if it is part of a bigger strategy that could still benefit XRP indirectly. One important thing to understand is how sentiment works in the crypto space. The market does not always move based only on facts, it also moves based on expectations and emotions. When something unexpected happens, it creates curiosity, and curiosity leads to attention. That attention can quickly turn into buying pressure if people believe there is an opportunity. This is exactly the kind of situation we are seeing right now. XRP has always been a unique asset in the crypto world because of its focus on real world use, especially in payments and financial systems. Unlike many other digital assets that rely heavily on hype, XRP has built its identity around utility. That is why any external move that even slightly connects to financial innovation can create speculation around XRP's future. Right now, many investors are asking whether this surprising move could lead to new partnerships, new integrations, or even a shift in how certain systems operate. While there is no confirmed direct link yet, the possibility alone is enough to create strong discussion. And in crypto, discussion often comes before movement. Another factor to consider is timing. This move did not happen in isolation. It happened at a time when the market is already sensitive and looking for direction. That makes it even more powerful because it adds fuel to an already active environment. When the market is quiet, big news can go unnoticed. But when the market is alert, even a small signal can create a big reaction. We also need to look at how quickly information spreads today. The moment this news came out, it started trending across platforms, and thousands of people began sharing their opinions. Some believe this is a major bullish signal for XRP, while others are more cautious and want to see more confirmation before making any decisions. This mix of excitement and caution is what creates volatility, and volatility is where opportunities often appear. At the same time, experienced investors know that not every headline leads to long term impact. That is why it is important to stay focused on the bigger picture. XRP's value will ultimately depend on adoption, usage, and real world demand. But events like this can act as catalysts that speed things up. So, what we are seeing right now is the early stage of a potential shift. The market is reacting, people are paying attention, and XRP is once again at the center of discussion. Whether this turns into a major move or just a short term reaction will depend on what happens next. And that is exactly what we are going to explore further. Now, let's go deeper into the actual move itself and why it is creating such a strong reaction in the crypto space, especially among XRP holders and market watchers who are trying to understand the bigger picture behind this situation. What makes this development so interesting is not just the action, but the timing and the pattern behind it. When someone with a strong influence in technology, payments, and innovation makes a move, it is rarely random, and that is exactly why people are paying close attention right now. The move appears to be connected to financial systems, digital infrastructure, or payment related developments. And that is where XRP naturally enters the conversation because of its long standing position in cross border payments. Many analysts are now looking at this situation from multiple angles. Some believe that this could be an indirect signal that large scale financial innovation is moving faster than expected, and that alone can benefit XRP because it is already built for that purpose. Others are trying to connect more direct dots, asking whether there could be a deeper strategy that might eventually involve blockchain based payment systems where XRP could play a role. One of the key reasons XRP is being discussed in this context is because of its efficiency. XRP transactions are fast, low cost, and designed for real world financial use, especially when it comes to transferring value across borders. So, whenever there is any development related to improving financial systems or creating new digital frameworks, XRP naturally becomes part of the conversation because it already solves many of those problems. Another important aspect is how the market reacts to influence. In crypto, perception can sometimes move faster than reality. Even if there is no official confirmation of a direct connection, the idea that there could be one is enough to create momentum. This is exactly what we are seeing right now as investors begin positioning themselves early, just in case this situation develops into something bigger. At the same time, there is a growing belief among some investors that the future of finance will not be controlled by a single system or a single technology. Instead, it will likely involve a mix of different platforms, networks, and digital assets working together. In that kind of environment, XRP has a strong chance to be part of the system because it is already aligned with institutional use and financial efficiency. This is why the current move is being seen as more than just a headline. It is being viewed as a potential indicator of where things might be heading. If large players are moving toward faster, more efficient, and more scalable financial solutions, then assets like XRP are already positioned in that direction. That creates a sense of readiness, which is very important in a fast moving market. However, it is also important to stay realistic. Not every move leads to a direct partnership or immediate integration. Sometimes these developments simply highlight trends that were already forming. In this case, the trend is clear. The world is moving toward digital finance, faster transactions, and more efficient systems. XRP fits into that trend, but it still needs real adoption to fully benefit from it. Another point that many people are discussing is how this could affect investor confidence. When a powerful figure makes a move that aligns with the future of finance, it can increase confidence in the entire sector. That confidence can flow into assets that are seen as useful and ready for real world application, and XRP is often placed in that category. At the same time, we are seeing increased attention from both retail and institutional investors. Retail investors are driven by excitement and opportunity, while institutions are driven by long term value and stability. When both groups start focusing on the same asset, it creates a strong foundation for potential growth. This is why moments like this are so important because they bring different types of attention to the same place. There is also a psychological factor involved. When people see unexpected moves from influential figures, they start thinking about what they might know that others do not. This creates a sense of urgency, and urgency often leads to action. In the crypto market, that action usually shows up as increased trading volume and price movement. But smart investors understand that it is not just about reacting quickly, it is about understanding deeply. That is why breaking down situations like this is so important. You want to see the logic behind the move, not just the surface level reaction. Right now, the situation is still developing, and we are in a phase where information is limited, but speculation is high. This is usually the phase where early positioning happens, but it is also where mistakes can be made if decisions are based only on hype. So, the key takeaway from this part is simple. The move itself may not be directly tied to XRP yet, but it strongly connects to the type of future that XRP is built for. That connection alone is enough to create attention, discussion, and potential momentum. Now, let's focus on the part that most people are really thinking about, and that is the actual impact this situation could have on XRP in terms of price movement, adoption, and its overall position in the market if this momentum continues to build. At this stage, we need to look at how markets usually behave when a strong narrative begins to form. Right now, the narrative is not fully confirmed, but it is powerful enough to influence perception. And in crypto, perception often comes before reality. When investors start believing that something important could happen, they begin to position themselves early, and that early positioning can create noticeable price movement even before any official news is confirmed. For XRP, this kind of situation is especially important because it has spent a long time building a foundation based on utility rather than hype. That means when hype finally arrives, it does not come into an empty space, it comes into a structure that is already built for real world use. This combination of utility and attention is what can create strong and sustained moves if the conditions are right. One possible outcome of this situation is a gradual increase in buying pressure. As more people hear about this development and start connecting it to XRP, curiosity turns into research, and research often turns into action. When enough people take action at the same time, it creates upward pressure on price. This does not always happen instantly, but it can build over time as confidence grows. Another important factor is volume. Whenever a major narrative starts forming, trading volume usually increases because more participants enter the market. Increased volume is a key sign of interest, and interest is what drives momentum. If XRP begins to see a steady rise in volume along with positive sentiment, that could indicate that this situation is having a real impact rather than just a short term reaction. However, it is also important to understand that the market does not move in a straight line. Even in strong bullish situations, there are always pullbacks, corrections, and moments of uncertainty. These movements are normal and often necessary because they allow the market to stabilize before making another move. So, if XRP starts reacting to this situation, it will likely do so in waves rather than one continuous push. From an adoption perspective, the impact could be even more significant if this situation develops further. If the move we are discussing leads to broader changes in how financial systems operate, then XRP could benefit because it is already designed to fit into that kind of environment. Adoption is the real driver of long term value, and any development that pushes the world closer to efficient digital payments can indirectly support XRP's growth. There is also the possibility of increased attention from institutions. Large investors and financial organizations are always looking for assets that solve real problems. If this situation highlights the importance of fast, low cost, and scalable transactions, then XRP naturally becomes part of that conversation. Institutional attention does not always lead to immediate price spikes, but it creates a stronger foundation for long term growth. At the same time, we need to consider the role of expectations. Right now, expectations are rising because of the unexpected nature of this move. When expectations rise too quickly, the market can become sensitive to disappointment. If nothing concrete follows, some of that excitement can fade, leading to short term pullbacks. This is why it is important to stay balanced and not assume outcomes before they are confirmed. Another angle to look at is competition. XRP is not the only asset aiming to be part of the future financial system. There are other projects working towards similar goals, and any major shift in the industry will likely benefit multiple players. However, XRP's advantage lies in its maturity, its established use case, and its existing connections within the financial world. That gives it a stronger position compared to newer or less developed projects. We also cannot ignore the role of community. XRP has one of the most active and loyal communities in the crypto space. When a situation like this appears, the community quickly amplifies the discussion, spreads information, and keeps the conversation alive. This kind of organic attention is powerful because it keeps XRP in the spotlight, which is exactly where momentum begins. Another important point is how quickly things can change. In crypto, developments can move fast and narratives can shift within days or even hours. That is why staying updated is so important. What looks like a small signal today can turn into a major trend tomorrow if new information supports it. So, when we put all of this together, we see a situation full of potential, but also full of uncertainty. The price could react positively if momentum builds. Adoption could benefit if the broader trend moves in the right direction. And XRP's position could strengthen if it continues to align with the future of finance. But at the same time, nothing is guaranteed, and that is the reality of the market. The key is to watch how this situation develops, look for confirmation, and understand the difference between speculation and real progress. Now, let's take a step further and break down the possible scenarios that could come out of this situation, because at this point, everything depends on what happens next and how the market reacts to new information as it becomes available. The first scenario, and the one that is getting the most attention right now, is the bullish case. In this situation, the move we are discussing turns out to be part of a larger shift toward faster and more advanced financial systems. If that happens, and if even a small connection to blockchain based payments becomes clearer, then XRP could benefit in a strong way because it is already designed for that exact purpose. In this case, the current attention we are seeing would just be the beginning, and it could grow into a much larger wave of interest. In a bullish scenario like this, we would likely see a steady increase in confidence across the market. More investors would begin to view XRP not just as another crypto asset, but as a serious tool for real world financial use. That shift in perception is very powerful because it changes how people value the asset. Instead of focusing only on short term price movements, they begin to think about long term potential. And that kind of thinking usually leads to stronger and more stable growth. We could also see increased media coverage and broader discussion across financial platforms. When a narrative becomes strong enough, it spreads beyond the crypto space and enters mainstream conversation. That kind of exposure can bring in new investors who may not have been paying attention to XRP before. More attention leads to more participation, and more participation can lead to stronger momentum. Another positive outcome could be the possibility of new partnerships or integrations. While nothing is confirmed at this stage, situations like this sometimes open the door for collaboration between different technologies and systems. If XRP becomes part of any new or expanding financial network, that would be a major step forward in terms of adoption. And adoption is what ultimately drives long term value. However, we also need to look at a neutral scenario where the move does not lead to any direct connection with XRP, but still supports the overall direction of the market. In this case, XRP may still benefit, but in a more gradual way. Instead of a sudden surge, we might see slow and steady growth as the broader financial system continues to evolve. This kind of movement is less exciting in the short term, but it can be healthier in the long run because it is based on real progress rather than hype. In a neutral scenario, XRP remains in a strong position, but it does not experience an immediate breakout. Instead, it continues to build its foundation while waiting for more concrete developments. This is often how long term assets behave. They move slowly until the right moment arrives, and then they accelerate. Now, let's consider the cautious or bearish scenario. In this case, the move we are discussing turns out to have no meaningful connection to XRP or to the type of systems that XRP is built for. If that happens, the current excitement could fade, and some investors who entered based on speculation might start to exit their positions. This could create short term downward pressure on price. It is important to understand that this kind of reaction is normal in the crypto market. When expectations rise quickly and are not met with confirmation, the market adjusts. That does not mean the asset loses its value or its long term potential. It simply means that the short term narrative was stronger than the actual development. Even in a bearish scenario, XRP's core fundamentals do not disappear. Its technology, its use case, and its position in the financial space remain the same. So while the price might react in the short term, the long term outlook would still depend on adoption and real world usage rather than a single event. Another thing to consider is how experienced investors approach situations like this. They do not rely on a single outcome. Instead, they prepare for multiple scenarios and adjust their strategies based on what actually happens. This kind of thinking is important because it reduces risk and allows for better decision making in uncertain conditions. Right now, we are in a phase where all three scenarios are possible. The market is watching closely, information is still limited, and sentiment is shifting quickly. This is usually the stage where patience becomes very important. Acting too quickly can lead to mistakes, while waiting for confirmation can provide clarity. We should also pay attention to key signals moving forward. These include any official announcements, changes in market behavior, increases in trading volume, and new developments in the financial or technology space that could support the current narrative. These signals will help determine which scenario is becoming more likely. So, the main takeaway from this part is that this situation has potential, but it also has uncertainty. There is a clear opportunity if things develop in the right direction, but there is also risk if expectations are not met. Understanding both sides is what allows you to stay balanced and make smarter decisions. Now, let's bring everything together and look at the bigger picture so you can clearly understand what this situation really means and how you should think about it moving forward without getting distracted by short term noise or emotional reactions. What we have seen so far is a surprising move that has created a strong wave of attention across the crypto market, especially around XRP. The reason this attention is so important is not just because of the move itself, but because of what it represents. It represents a shift in focus toward faster, more efficient, and more advanced financial systems. And that is exactly the environment where XRP is designed to operate. At the same time, it is very important to stay grounded. Right now, we are still in the early stage of this situation. There is no confirmed direct connection, and most of the current movement is being driven by speculation, expectations, and market psychology. This does not make it meaningless, but it does mean that we need to separate possibility from reality. A smart way to approach this is to think in layers. The first layer is short term reaction, which is driven by news, hype, and sudden attention. This is where we are right now, and this layer can create quick price movements in both directions. The second layer is medium term development, where we start to see whether any real progress comes out of the situation. This includes partnerships, integrations, or any kind of official confirmation. The third layer is long term value, which depends on real adoption, real usage, and the role XRP plays in the future financial system. If you only focus on the first layer, You will always feel uncertain because short term movements are unpredictable. But if you focus on all three layers together, you get a much clearer and more balanced view. This allows you to make decisions based on understanding rather than emotion. Another key point is discipline. In moments like this, it is very easy to get caught up in excitement and make decisions too quickly. The market often rewards patience more than speed, waiting for confirmation, watching how the situation develops, and staying informed can be more powerful than reacting instantly to every headline. We also need to remember that the crypto market is highly competitive and constantly evolving. XRP has strong fundamentals, but it is still part of a larger ecosystem where many projects are trying to solve similar problems. That means its success will depend not just on external events, but on its ability to continue growing, adapting, and being used in real world applications. At the same time, moments like this can act as a spotlight. They bring attention, they start conversations, and they remind people why certain assets exist in the first place. Even if this situation does not lead to an immediate breakthrough, it still helps keep XRP relevant and visible in a fast moving market. And that visibility is valuable. So, the best way to look at this right now is as an opportunity to stay alert, stay informed, and stay prepared. Watch how the narrative evolves, pay attention to real developments, and avoid making decisions based only on excitement or fear. The market will always have noise, but clarity comes from understanding the bigger picture. As we move forward, the next few developments will be very important. Whether we see confirmation, new partnerships, or simply a continuation of the current trend, each step will help define the direction XRP takes from here. Until then, this remains a situation full of potential, but also one that requires patience and careful observation. Financial disclaimer: this content is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. The crypto market is highly volatile and prices can change at any time without warning. Always do your own research before making any investment decisions and never invest money that you cannot afford to lose. It is important to understand the risks involved and to make decisions based on your own financial situation and goals.